Welcome back to another episode of the CoDaKrew podcast. This episode is just going to be quickly reacting to match week 29 of the Premier League in advance of our predictions. And yeah, let's just get started with Bournemouth versus Brentford. So this was one of these games where the scoreline, it does say 0-0, but the feeling afterward is going to be very different depending on which side you ask. For Brentford, it was probably a decent away point. And for Bournemouth, it's going to feel like absolutely 2 points draw. Because the reality is, Bournemouth were the better team for most of the night, really. Not overwhelmingly dominant in possession or territory, but they were the team that was consistently creating the most across this match. You can see it in the attack momentum here. 5 big chances, I think, or 4, sure, but not too far off from 2xG. Each time the finish just simply wasn't there. Tavernier alone, I think, hit the post twice. I know at one point there was a VAR check on one of his runs. Could have been a penalty, to be fair, but Bournemouth had more than enough opportunities besides that one that they should have been able to score at some point, and they just missed the final touch. And it continues, I think, a bit of a trend for Bournemouth lately, which is they are 9 games unbeaten in the league, sure, but in the last 5, there have been 4 draws. Earlier in the season, some of these performances, I imagine, would have come out as wins. Back when they were like second in the table, they were finishing off these kinds of chances. I mentioned this before that in this recent run compared to like earlier in the season, their attack has not looked as sharp. It has not been as strong. The chance creation is still there, but the ruthlessness is not quite the same right now. Brentford, meanwhile, again, they'll probably view this as a job well done in difficult circumstances. They came in on a great run, actually, away from home. I think they are 7 wins in their last away matches, so it's really good away form for them. But for about 70 minutes here, I think they really did not generate much at all going forward. And you see there is this big spike toward the end. Of course, they don't end up scoring, but yeah, it's like their first shot on target even, I think, was not until this point on the momentum graph, around 70 minutes. They do deserve credit, though, for surviving this 70-minute spell where they created so little, but they did defend very well. Kelleher made the key save on Tavernier before halftime. The backline held up under a lot of crosses and second balls. And once Bournemouth failed to take those chances that they had earlier on, the Bees were gradually able to grow into this game. Vandenberg's header, I know, forced Petrovic into a strong save toward the end. And Brentford were, at least in those last 15-20 minutes, threatening to steal something out of this game. So in the end, the balance of satisfaction is flipped here. Bournemouth definitely played the better football, but they're going to leave feeling quite frustrated. Brentford didn't play particularly well until, again, those like last 15-20 minutes, but they will be happy to walk away with a valuable away point and keep ahead of Bournemouth as well. And yes, in the bigger picture of that European race, if I just go to the standings here quickly, we've got Brentford on 7th, Bournemouth on 9th, but I think the gap has opened up a bit. It's now 4 points. And when you're trying to break into these European places for Bournemouth, all these stalemates they've been having, all these draws are going to slow their momentum. One of these teams who have stayed clearly in the European places with this result will be a lot happier than the other, even though you could say that the team to lose out on that European place was the one that deserved the points here. With that said, we are going to go on to Everton versus Burnley. Now, this was not a spectacular Everton performance. No, not too much flair, any crazy chance creation, but it was exactly the kind of result they needed, especially given that they were playing at home, at the Bramley Moore, the Hill Dickinson, whatever you want to call it. Because they've had months of inconsistent results at this new stadium, and this comfortable 2-0 win has now given the home crowd something to relax about. And if I go to the standings again, it's going to keep Everton as well firmly in the European discussion because they're only 1 point behind Brentford. The match itself, fairly predictable. Burnley, of course, arrived with a deep conservative setup. Everton spent long stretches of the game figuring out how to try and break it down. You can see they've got most of the ball here, but they weren't really finding that many good chances at the start here. Plenty of possession, not much penetration. And in the end, it did take a set piece to break things open. James Garner with a deep free kick and Tarkovsky rose highest to guide his header into the corner. Set pieces, I think, were Everton's best outlet this whole game. Certainly, leading up to that first goal, they were really the one thing that was keeping Everton there in terms of attack. And yeah, once you do get that goal, of course, Burnley's hoping they can keep it drawn for as long as possible. But once you do get that goal, you kind of force them out of their shell. force them to make an effort to actually score something. Again, not what Burnley wants in their games. And so it's from there that Everton gradually took control. Of course, they did have a neat move across the pitch for the second goal, and they had chances to score elsewhere too. I think Gay hit the crossbar at one point. I'm pretty sure it was Gay. And Beto did waste a good header early in the second half. But for the most part, I think Everton were good in that they never chased that second goal too hard. Because Burnley have shown that when their opponents get frantic, yes, they can take advantage of those openings that they're given. But Everton looked very calm. They never looked desperate to chase a big scoreline. And I think Moyes should be very satisfied with the balance of this performance. And admittedly, because of how little Burnley did on attack, they were rarely threatened, but they were also controlled and patient. Really exactly what I think Moyes would hope for. Honestly, this showing was worse than usual for Burnley, though, because not a single shot on target until the 79th minute. And even that was a fairly harmless effort. And in those closing stages, too, if I can just quickly check the subs here. Yeah, here we go. Medjbri, who was like one of the few players who was injecting some energy into this game, got subbed off for Laurent. I mean, how can you expect to get out of the relegation zone when you're playing like this? They've only won once since October. They are 8 points off of, or 9 points off of safety. Yeah, it's like, honestly, the way things are going now, I look at like how Burnley are playing. They're so defensive, so little in terms of attack. And then I look at like Wolves, who are going out and scoring goals. I think Wolves might not be far off in terms of their chance of staying up. They might have a better chance of staying up than Burnley at this point. They certainly have the motivation to do it. I'm not quite seeing that from this Burnley team or from Scott Parker, their manager. Yeah, with how Burnley are approaching these games, I feel like relegation is just becoming more and more inevitable. I mean, I know Darian and I, when we last did our most recent overview video, we said we expect Burnley are getting relegated. Wolves were not looking quite this good at that point, and so Wolves were like long gone from that conversation. But yeah, genuinely, Wolves might have a better chance of getting out at this point. I don't know what to say. It seems pretty much decided for Burnley. And yeah, as for Everton, that home form's been an issue, but maybe they have now steadied it, which would be great timing given, I think, Liverpool. I know we've still got to go there and play. Chelsea, I think Man City as well, still to come to the Bramley-Moore. So we will see if this is the start of a turnaround in home form for them. Now, Leeds Sunderland. For Leeds, this was exactly the kind of game that they needed to win and exactly the kind that they keep failing to solve tactically. Farke's side controlled the ball for long stretches and spent much of the match in Sunderland's half, and that territorial dominance rarely translated into any actual danger. I mean, in the last game, I did pull this up, and they ended up with 30% possession against Man City. They were also playing at home here, but of course it's City, and City gets all of that ball. But here, they had 70%. The possession actually just flipped. Sunderland were now the team playing with 30% of possession. And Leeds couldn't use their high press strategy at all because they were spending too much time with the ball, and they just could not manage that. They could not manage all this time they had with the ball at their feet. Too many attacks ended with crosses into a crowded box, hopeful deliveries from set pieces. Rarely nothing got anywhere, though. And Sunderland's defensive structure was rarely pulled out of shape here. This lack of cutting edge in the final third, I think, has become a concern for Leeds, and especially a concern in games like this where, I mean, they do get some chances just because they have so much possession, but they're not necessarily creating great chances. I mean, you see that they had 0 big chances here. And the ones they do get, they're not taking well at all. Again, XG on those chances already not great, but it's not like any one chance they're finishing super well either. You see that there's like 1.15 XG across 18 different shots they have, which I want to say is like, I know it's less than 0.1 XG per shot. It might be something like 0.07. It's not great. And then you look at Sunderland, okay, they've got less XG, but they're doing it off 3 shots. So they just like, the chance creation was honestly way, way better for them. And yeah, Leeds, I know at one point they tried to introduce some more attacking options from the bench, but really when like they just did all this shooting, lots of low XG shots, never really one good clear chance. They tired themselves out, and eventually the game went into Sunderland's rhythm. And as for Sunderland, they executed their plan almost perfectly. Protect the defensive structure, slow the game down whenever possible. You've got to force Leeds to break you down patiently. And Sunderland were obviously more than happy to concede possession and let all of that happen. And they trusted their back three and their midfield screen to absorb that pressure. And eventually, they came into the game, took a few good chances, kind of like third quarter, you could say, or start of the second half, and they found that goal toward the end. Ended up being a penalty from a good run into the box. But yeah, they just really just let Leeds tire themselves out, and it worked like a charm. Also, Xhaka is always great to have on the pitch. He was here too. Once he got subbed in, Sunderland still weren't super adventurous going forward, but they became more capable of managing that possession. Again, in that second half, it really was a big impact from Xhaka there. And that composure made a real difference because, well, Leeds were starting to tire out. Sunderland were starting to get that momentum. But you've got to be able to push that difference, though. That's the thing. You can't slow down in sympathy with the other team. When they slow down, you've got to ramp things up as well to really press them hard. And Sunderland were able to do that, and they eventually found their moment. So I think I'm seeing a really strong approach to these away games from Sunderland. They didn't try to outplay Leeds. They simply made the game uncomfortable, frustrating, slow. And in this game, that discipline was enough to secure them some valuable points for the European race. And as for Leeds, I know there are two teams imploding beneath them in the relegation race right now with Tottenham and Forest, but they shouldn't be too quick to dismiss their chances of relegation. They're still looking for attacking clarity in a lot of these games against other lower table teams. And until they can ensure that they have such clarity in every game they play, they can't be too unconcerned about the drop. They've got to find their goals more consistently. I mean, I know Tottenham are like absolutely terrible right now. Forest very questionable as well. We'll get to both of them toward the end of the video. But yeah, you can't be too sure of yourself when you are only 3 points above the drop right now. Okay, as for Wolves Liverpool, we have the bottom team now in that relegation zone, Wolves. Only 3 points off Burnley now, though. They are at this point still 12 points off the team in 17th, Forest. So it would be an absolute miracle if they were to get out. But yeah, even though they're almost confirmed relegated still, they are playing with some actual pride right now, which they did not have at any point in like the first half of the season. And they've also found a formula or rediscovered a formula that gives them a chance in these big games, like against Arsenal or Villa or now Liverpool, which is sit deep, defend the box with numbers, scrap for second balls, and wait for that one moment to break forward and take it well. And they did. Wolves did not threaten for the vast majority of this match. I'll go to that momentum graph again, but there really was nothing here. But they were content to let Liverpool circulate possession in front of them. The back line was compact. The midfield was working tirelessly, even without the ball, so they were able to screen very well. And they made sure that there were just very few clean openings in central areas. So despite the fact that we got as much momentum in attack as we did, there was not a super clear chance at any point. And for a team like this at the bottom of the table, who you might expect would have no motivation right now, it was a great, very disciplined performance. But again, I think the biggest difference lately is not even in the defense. It's that when Wolves do get those moments in attack, they are taking them very well. The first goal came from one of their, again, very rare attacking sequences. And then we equalized, but they did not settle for just the 1 point. They kept pushing forward when the opportunities did appear. They did start to get more of those opportunities toward the end. We faltered a bit. But yeah, they really do push for those attacking chances whenever they get them. And it takes a long time. But as I said in, I think our last reaction video, they are willing to suffer through their games to wait until like the 75th minute and past, or more like even the 80th minute and past. They got 78th. That's their first goal here. But they're willing to wait until that point just to get their first chance of the game, and they take it really well. Yeah, whether it changes anything about their relegation outlook is another question entirely, but Wolves are no longer an easy night for anyone. That much is clear. From our perspective, though, Liverpool, this was a sort of match that's become far too familiar as of late. Lots of possession, long stretches of territorial control. but very little again that actually hurts the opposing side. We moved the ball around Wolves' defensive block. It felt slow. It felt predictable. Wolves felt comfortable handling all of it. The first half was really, really bad. I'll just pull this up. I mean, of course, Wolves had 0 XG. They weren't taking any shots. But with 6 shots, we had 0.26 XG. Not a great chance anywhere there. The second half was better. And like in the Nottingham game as well, when we were similarly struggling in attack in the first half in that game, we made subs, and those added a lot of energy. But it still felt like we were forcing the issue rather than finding any clear openings. I mean, we did actually get a lot of big chances towards like the very, very end. But I think we could not count on like good finishing from the team, from the Reds at any point in this game. And as well, defense is a big issue for Liverpool, right? I've talked about this more than enough. I feel like I'm not going to elaborate on it too much. But yeah, you've got to have a defensive lapse, one moment of bad positioning to let Wolves take the lead. Yes, we did equalize after that. But then once we score, we have another moment, another defensive error, a messy clearance from Alisson, and we concede another goal, which just so happens to be in stoppage time as well, which is another problem that we've been having lately. Because while we were scoring a lot of those to start the season, it's been us conceding them mostly as of late. So really, it is just the same patterns over and over again for this Liverpool side. It's really unfortunate. It seems like we can have 2 good league games, and then every third game maybe will be a stinker like this. And of course, we're pushing for Champions League, so that's not doing us any favors at all, especially when like Man U as of recent have been as consistent as they have. And Chelsea even have been not too bad either. They're not winning as much, but they are still getting their draws, right? Of course, we didn't get to sit with this result for long. We just played Wolves at the Molineux again for the FA Cup. This game, we beat them pretty handily. But again, I feel like we were playing pretty lethargic to start in that first half. We at least didn't make any glaring errors here. But I'm concerned about any games that we have against teams in like Wolves' part of the table. If they play compact, if they can shut us out for the first little while, I take it we're going to have a lot of problems scoring, finding a stable lead, just as we had issues in that last game against Wolves. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty tight race for the UCL right now, and we have to step up, really. Speaking of which, we have 2 more teams in that UCL race, Villa and Chelsea. And I said in our last video that I thought the first half of this game would be cagey, and that if it was scoreless, a lot of things could happen from that point. But I thought I would give it to Villa 2-1. And I'll admit I was basically entirely wrong with that timeline of events. Villa scored almost immediately. Joao Pedro eventually got one back for Chelsea, and just when I thought it might be drawn 1-1 going into the half, he finds another one deep into stoppage time. So it's Chelsea 2-1 going into the half, and they just keep scoring after they come out, and you end up with a 4-1 win. But anyways, looking at the teams. For Villa, I feel like this game started in the best way possible for them. It is an early goal in a match between these 2 Champions League contenders. It should put you in a perfect position to control the tempo, box yourselves in even if you feel like it, but just make sure you can maintain that lead and think about what that's going to do for the UCL race if you can manage that against a team like Chelsea. Instead, what we saw was Villa completely failing to establish that lead after going ahead. It's something I'd expect of Chelsea. They've had a history with that. Like I think in the Burnley game, it was a 2-2 draw, I'm pretty sure, and they struggled toward the end of that game. But no, it was Villa that was really struggling to hold on to a lead in this one. Villa usually even go for the comebacks, but this time they scored first. They couldn't hold on afterward. Their pressing was disjointed between the front line and the midfield, which also left space in the middle of the pitch, and Chelsea started to exploit those pockets more and more and more as the game went on. And normally Villa can survive stuff like that because of how compact Emery's teams are usually. Here, the defensive structure just did not look right. The line stayed high even when the ball was under pressure. And the distances between the defense and midfield got really big, so the entire system became vulnerable. Because with bigger distances, your offside trap stops being reliable. The recovery runs become much harder, right? It's just, the chemistry was like really not there at certain points in this game for Villa. And the frustrating thing, I think, for Villa is there were moments where they could have steadied the match before the momentum got away from them. But eventually, this game just got very chaotic. You can see it's going back and forth, but it worked out in Chelsea's favor. And Villa just had no semblance of defensive structure. The Blues were finding space far too easily. I mean, Emery's teams, again, are usually defined by structure and discipline, but here both seem to disappear as soon as the game stopped going their way. Yeah, just all around bad for Villa. Not at all what you'd expect for them. But I did say in our recent league overview video that I thought even Liverpool, we had a decent chance of getting past Villa in the standings, just assuming that all the problems they're having right now, especially that key midfield injury crisis, continue to hamper them. And it does seem like with this game, based on how it played out, that they'll be struggling for a while still. For Chelsea, though, very encouraging performance. You can talk about all the scoring they did, but something else I noticed is while they were down for that first half hour or so, they played very controlled. They got right to work, really, after that opening Villa goal. You can see that almost immediately they're getting a lot of momentum here. Circulating the ball, waiting for those gaps to appear between Villa's midfield and defensive lines, which admittedly, yes, Villa did allow a lot of that to Chelsea, but they found those spaces consistently. And once they got their first goal, they just kept going. And so the match gradually tilted in their favor. They got that momentum because they just kept putting on pressure at just the right times. Even after the fourth goal, they were still looking for those gaps and shooting for a while before finally settling down at like the 75th minute. Speaking of consistency across this game, Joao Pedro was so often arriving in dangerous areas here. I mean, he got the yellow, so I guess that's why he's not getting a 10, or maybe SofaScore just doesn't feel like giving anyone a 10. But yeah, it's 3 goals, absolutely deserved. It was great for him. He was able to take advantage of Chelsea's like forward motion, where they were creating these situations so that their forwards could attack open space. Pedro was getting into those open spaces, again, between the midfield and the Villa defenders. And some other guys like Palmer, Garnacho, even Fofana were doing that at one point. They were doing a pretty good job of it as well. It happened to work out really well for Joao Pedro. But honestly, a lot of the players on Chelsea, yeah, again, even Fofana in the back line, were doing good to find some gaps in Villa's back line, and they did take advantage. There was a lot of chance creation for Chelsea here. I mean, they scored 4. Yeah, XG was 3.6, all around pretty reasonable, right? I mean, Villa might be 3 points ahead of Chelsea right now. I think it is 3 points. But the way things are looking, the Blues seem almost destined to get ahead of Villa. And again, Chelsea will give my guys at Liverpool a hard time too. I'm not sure we get ahead of them at this point, but I am feeling pretty confident now that if Villa continue playing this way, and that doesn't seem too unlikely to me, that we can pass them up too. So, yeah, we have to up our game, but Villa arguably need to up theirs even more. Anyways, Brighton Arsenal. This was a whack ass game. I'll get into that in a bit, but Brighton are going to come away from this one feeling like it was a huge missed opportunity because for long stretches, they were the team actually playing the football. I mean, yeah, Arsenal are playing away here, but you would expect a lot more of the team that's in first place. But yeah, it was Brighton putting up most of the work in the first half. Their movement through midfield was lively. The pressing caused Arsenal a lot of problems, and they spent a lot of time forcing the league leaders deeper than Arteta would have liked. The overall pattern of this match was really suiting them for like the first 60 to 75 minutes, like that area. And they had the energy, they had the territorial pressure, the crowd, of course, was behind them, but they just couldn't turn it into a breakthrough. Arsenal defended the box with numbers, blocked shots, forced Brighton into some difficult shot attempts, not great chances. And when you're facing a team that is prepared to defend like Arsenal will, once they have the lead, I mean, you let up this ninth minute goal. I would argue really not Brighton's fault, but you let that up. And at this point now, you're going to need a lot more precision and a little bit of luck as well in order to find your equalizer, find your breakthrough. And Brighton just could not quite find that moment of quality that they needed. The goal itself, again, seemed especially cruel from Brighton's perspective. There was no intricate attacking move from Arsenal or any sustained pressure. It did kind of come out of nowhere, and it was just a routine shot that took a slight deflection, and it ended up going in. But once Arsenal got ahead, they turned the match into exactly what Brighton would hope to avoid. The tempo slowed, stoppages increased, and Arsenal were happy to turn this game into a messy stop-start affair. And with that kind of game, it's just hard for any team to find a breakthrough. And so there's only so much Brighton could do in this situation. They did have, to be fair, 80 minutes to find something. But yeah, it was always going to be difficult for them once Arsenal found that opener. As for Arsenal, though, I think one stat is enough to explain this game away, which is that they had 0.01 XG in the first half of this game. The 0.01 XG coming from Saka's goal in the first half, in the 9th minute. Nothing else in that half. Yeah, it is an extraordinary statistic for a team that is leading the league. And even after halftime, it didn't get much more fluid. I think it took until very late. I want to say it was 88th minute, so almost before regulation time even ended, before they managed another shot on target. They had, in total, I mean, I take it was 2 shots on target here. That's something, all right. People talk about her on ball. That's her on ball right there. I mean, it was a trashy display from a pure football perspective. There wasn't really much football at all, but that doesn't even seem to matter anymore with this Arsenal side because they have become extremely good at managing situations like this. They get ahead and they make a breakthrough. Very difficult. Tempo drops, their defensive structure tightens a lot, and every moment of momentum for their opponents just gets squeezed out of the game. Again, the time wasting that they love to do on like throw-ins and corners and whatnot definitely helps to break up that momentum. And it's obviously not pretty. It's kind of scummy, you could say, which is why, of course, opposing managers and fans are going to keep complaining about it. I know Hertzler certainly wasn't shy about it afterward. But the table doesn't compare. The table does not care about how exciting or not exciting the performance is, right? Arsenal are now 7 points ahead of City. Another win added to the tally, and even if you assume City wins their game in hand, they are still 4 points ahead after that. I mean, Arsenal might not be playing beautiful football right now, but the approach is clearly working for them. When you are this close to the finish in a title race, and especially when you've had the experiences that Arsenal have had as of late, just going second over and over and over again, yeah, sometimes grinding out ugly wins is exactly what you need. And if you can find the win, then sure, why would you not take that to keep yourself ahead? If it's working, yeah, I hate it too, just like seeing that these games are happening in the league. But I can't blame Arsenal. If they get their 3 points, they get their 3 points, right? It is what it is. And ultimately, they are still, at minimum, even with that game in hand for City, 4 points ahead. Now, Fulham versus West Ham. Fulham, like Brighton, I think will be looking at this last game as an opportunity wasted, but in this case, not because they really dominated the match at any point in time. To be fair, West Ham didn't either. But this was also a stop-start game from the beginning, really, and the margins were so small, and Fulham just did not have that sharpness required to take advantage, and the margins did not quite fall their way. There was also an issue with creativity, I will say. Harry Wilson's absence was very notable here because Fulham just lacked that extra bit of invention in the final third. I know Josh King worked hard up front. You can see that here. Smith Rowe had a couple of late moments as well, but very little of it actually turned into clear chances, clear openings. And when Fulham did have moments where things might have gone their way, they couldn't capitalize. I know one of those moments was kind of out of their control with the overturned penalty in the second half. That is a lot of momentum gone for this team. But besides that, there were other moments that were largely down to Fulham. Between King and Iwobi, I know there were some close chances that could have been taken a bit differently, but ultimately Fulham just could not get the ball by West Ham's keeper or last defender. After that, it seems like they kind of lost their heads a bit. There was a breakdown in the back line between Bassi and Leno. Suddenly, Summerville just had like the easiest finish that you could ever expect. Yeah, it's not like Fulham were poor this whole game. They were fine for most of it defensively. But with a game this tight, when you go down pretty late on, and I mean, West Ham are absolutely willing to just play the block afterward and go for the 1-0 win, what can you really do? Whereas West Ham will certainly be happy here that the margins worked out in their favor. Again, most of this game was not in their control, nor was it in Fulham's, but they came with a clear approach, play the 4-4-2, stay compact without the ball, press when the opportunity appears, really, and just look to break through when they can through Bowen and Somerville. They take their chances when they get them, right? And it kept them pretty stable throughout the whole game. I mean, Fulham did, for the most part, have possession here. It was, pretty balanced throughout the first half. Again, no one really had control in that first half, and it was just like wild shooting from both of the teams, honestly. But West Ham were good in the defense. And as for the attack, I mean, they're playing a lot more aggressively than they were just like a month or two ago. They're playing with urgency, the kind that you would hope for from this team that is searching for survival right now. They're searching for an escape from the drop zone. Ultimately, their priorities are the same as Arsenal's, right? They don't want style points. They just want results. They need to collect them up, especially when the teams above them are as questionable as they are. Now is the time that you get some wins and really put the pressure on them. And that is exactly what they did here. They're not out of the drop zone just yet, but this does keep the momentum firmly on their side. They are now, I think, level on points with Nottingham. They are, just 1 point behind Tottenham as well. And West Ham certainly looks the most motivated out of those three. I'll talk about those two pretty soon. But yeah, I think they have a really good chance of getting out of relegation at this point. I mean, it's only Goldiff that's getting them off Forest. And Forest are having trouble scoring right now. So if it comes to it, they could get by on Goldiff at the very end of the season. But I think it is also possible that they just keep getting wins more often than either Tottenham or Nottingham do. And that's what gets them out of the draw. Yeah. It looks pretty promising for West Ham right now. Speaking of Forest, they just managed a draw at City. So to be fair, they didn't have a half bad result for this match week either. Of course, City expect to control games at the Etihad, get some pretty dominant wins. And they did control this game most of the way through, exactly as you'd expect. They just could not put it away. Initially, Forest sat deep, of course, defended the box with numbers, and just gave City all the possession. You can see it's 70% for them, right? And Pep's side did make good use of that ball. The passing rotations were fluid, the positioning between the lines was good, and eventually you had a classic City goal that was just patient circulation, a wide player gets free, and it's a cutback into the middle for a first-time finish. That's why you have guys like Semenyo, right? So you can get goals off like that. And City have got lots of great attacking talents to do that sort of thing. So great, now Forest have to open up and City can score even more. That's exactly what they want. But that's only going to work out if the second goal arrives on time. After all, City are not like Arsenal where they can immediately lock down the pitch for a while, or even the whole game if they feel like it. No, City need to score a second, and for all their control, they couldn't find that extra goal soon enough. At some point, the game did get a bit stretched as well, and it was one quick move down the flank for Forest, a cross, and a great shot from Gibbs-White to make it 1-1. It really did come almost out of nowhere, so I can't blame City too much for it, and they did respond quickly too with the Rodri header and briefly restored order. But again, even after they took that lead again, they couldn't find that next goal soon enough. And I will say, I mean, this season, City have not been closing games with the same authority that they had consistently a season or two ago. Earlier Guardiola sides had a way of suffocating opponents once they moved ahead. Long spells of possession, fewer defensive transitions, very little chaos to the game, really. This team, though, has been, this season, vulnerable to sudden swings in momentum. Forest's second equalizer was a good example of that. I mean, you see there was seemingly very little here. It was a moment of individual quality from Anderson, but the thing is, at this point in time, City had allowed some space and they lost defensive shape in a situation that you'd expect them to control. And so that's why it seems like it kind of pops out from nowhere, but just as much as you could attribute it to luck and, again, good individual quality from a Forest player, it was also largely down to City and their own mistakes. From there, the match became frantic, and of course City pushed hard for a winner, but they'd lost authority over the game by this point. For Forest, though, this is a huge point, right, from a game that they'd expect not to get anything out of, really, and it shows that despite all the managerial changes and a persistent lack of goals through this season, I know they've been struggling with goals, not helped by the fact that their main target man, Chris Wood, has been gone for practically all of the season. That's not doing them any favors. But this team has resilience, and they can still go out and score. They showed lots of resilience in this game against one of the best possession teams in the world. They stayed organized, absorbed pressure, took chances well whenever they came. And between Gibbs-White and Anderson, they might also have the sort of individual brilliance that struggling teams often need in order to survive. Think like Acuna that Wolves had last season. And of course, Wolves don't quite have that kind of player anymore. And it seems like, oh, maybe Strand Larson kind of had that potential in him, but oh, they send Palace, right? So maybe they don't quite have that guy anymore. West Ham, you can say, have, of course, Bowen and Paqueta, right? And you could say that Forest have got Gibbs White, and Anderson seems like he might be pretty good for the job as well. So it's good that they have those kinds of guys on the roster. And as for City, solid performance most of the way through, but it was 2 short periods where they couldn't find a closeout goal, and that cost them. I mean, City have now dropped 13 points from winning positions in the league. And even when they do win, at a lot of the time they win by 1 goal, which is, and the margins are very fine in those matches. Again, this is not Arsenal. City do not want to win by 1 goal. They're not trying to ensure that they do. They try to go for more, but they just don't have the same dominance right now to actually get that done that they've shown before in previous seasons. And if the title race tightens a bit in April and May even, this is still, well, really whatever happens even in a month or two's time, this is a night that people will look back on and say, well, could City have been closer to Arsenal at this point if they had won here? Could they even be ahead of Arsenal? A game where they could have just done a little bit more for the win, but they didn't, and it is 2 key points lost for them. Now, Newcastle Man U. Newcastle have had a truly chaotic campaign. I mean, I found this visual here from The Athletic, uses data from Opta, but it is just the games list is what it is. And Newcastle have played more games across all competitions than any other Big 5 league team in Europe. They don't even have the depth, really, to be doing that. And so they've had a questionable run as of late. Certainly at home, it's been very worrying. 3 straight home defeats, and now in their 4th home game against Man U, they get a red card right before halftime. So you think that for this United team now that was in glowing form, this should be an easy win now, right? But Newcastle instead somehow find a way to produce one of their best results of the season. First off, you see this team go down a man for a long stretch, and you'd expect them to be pinned back, just trying to survive. But Newcastle stayed organized. They kept the game uncomfortable for United. The midfield was aggressively competing for those second balls from the get-go, as soon as the half started. The defensive line stayed compact, and they were able to stop United from keeping all the attacking momentum during really any stretch of the game. I mean, they even found the first goal. They managed to do that. It was off a pen, yes, but they found the scoring sheet first. United did manage to get an equalizer really deep into stoppage time from Casemiro before the half. But I think as well, in a lot of recent Newcastle games, one setback that they have has turned into 2 or 3. But they didn't let that happen here. They stayed disciplined going into the second half. And yeah, they were eventually able to find that winner. Sula got that goal to sweeten the deal even more for Newcastle, but even a draw would be a strong result against this great Man U team while a man down. And yeah, it was a really weird time for Newcastle to find a result like this, but they managed to do it. And after everything Newcastle have been dealing with lately, whether it is injuries, fatigue from their crazy-ass match schedule, or just this very rough stretch of results that they've had as a result of all of that, and kind of that tumbling downward momentum, I imagine they're absolutely ecstatic to find 3 points here. It is a great break in the schedule for them. And hopefully for them, this becomes not just a break from the bad times, but it is a change in form. As for United, I mean, this really was their game to lose, right? And they had plenty of possession after the break. But not much of it actually troubled Newcastle. The tempo was slow, the ball movement was predictable, and the extra player that they had rarely appeared in a dangerous area, dangerous enough to actually stretch Newcastle's defensive shape. The home team looked far too comfortable here, given that they were a man down. And I don't know that I can point out one big thing that was wrong with how Man U approached this game. You expect Bruno Fernandes to have a lot of influence, and he did. His set-piece delivery again produced a goal right before halftime. But even that equalizer never really shifted the overall rhythm of the match. It did help perhaps Newcastle that was right before halftime. They went into the changing rooms, came out, reset, and carried on defending the same compact way they had before. And the longer the score stayed level, the more it felt like United were letting the game drift. I mean, of course, this was their imperative to take advantage of this numbers advantage, and they could not do that, right? So while I don't want to make any big takeaways from this game about how United are trash now, they weren't all bad in this game, despite the fact, again, that they could not score off that numbers advantage. But it does show that this United team is, in fact, not infallible. They can have bad games. The Carrick mandate of heaven is not going to save them in every game. And also, perhaps, if you want Šeško to score, he's got to be a super sub. I'm just saying, he was starting here. He wasn't all that great. He's been better off the bench. Maybe keep him there for a bit. Just a thought. And with that, we close out with Tottenham Palace, and I'll deal with Spurs at the end first. But first, Palace. They'll look at this as a very professional night's work. They've had a brutal schedule lately, right? We've talked about this with Palace, and a long injury list. So the priority here was probably just to get through the match with a result. I think a draw would be fine, but they did it very comfortably in the end. Palace started the game looking sharper, more composed on the ball, pretty comfortably settled in their structure. Like, they were more settled than Tottenham for sure. To be frank, they are playing Tottenham, who just fired manager Frank, only to not get the new manager boost with their new guy Tudor. And his usual system as well does not fit Tottenham at all. So we expect Tottenham to be all over the place. But credit where credit is due, Palace did take advantage. And once Tottenham started making mistakes, Palace were ruthless about punishing them, as you can see with this very quick scoring here. Sarr was the obvious standout, even beyond the 2 goals. He was causing problems all night for Tottenham with his pace, running in behind the defensive line. And Spurs had already been warned about that when his potential opener was ruled offside by the tightest of margins. But besides his great performance, I think the bigger story was Palace they saw Tottenham go down to 10 men, and they did not rush anything. They stayed composed. They just kept moving the ball, found those man advantages on the pitch. Again, what Man United was missing against Newcastle, Palace were able to find that against Tottenham. And from there, once they got their 3 quick-fire goals, they came in during the second half and were able to manage it, conserve some energy, and they walked away with 3 very comfortable points. Elephant in the room now, let's address it. What the fuck do you do with this Tottenham team? 11 league games without a win. Okay, I don't know that you can see all the matches here, but I think it is now. It is now 11 league games without a win, and yeah, it's 5 losses straight in the league. More importantly, this team just looks like they've completely lost faith in however they play. Whatever manager they're playing under, they have no faith in the play style, in the system. There's no confidence, no chemistry. Said lack of chemistry shows up everywhere. I mean, whether it's the slow build-up, the midfield is struggling to control tempo, or the defense becoming incredibly fragile. It's a mess all over the pitch, and even in moments where things briefly go their way, like Solanke's opener here, the team does not seem capable of stabilizing the match afterward. Instead, it's like what Newcastle has been doing. 1 mistake becomes 2, becomes 3, and suddenly the entire game has gone away from them. But Newcastle managed to avoid this spiraling issue by playing very well, despite being a man down against Man U. And Tottenham, as soon as they went a man down, immediately started playing like absolute dog shit. Like, there's seemingly just too many things going around this team, too many things going on for them not to spiral. They just can't avoid it. Anything goes wrong and they will spiral. Completely unnecessary foul from Van de Ven, to be clear. That red was not needed at all. But it turned this game that Spurs were leading into a full collapse within minutes. The defensive structure all but vanished after the penalty. Players started chasing the game individually, and Palace found space almost every time they attacked. And the issue is not just one player or even one manager. Igor Tudor has been only in the job for a few weeks, but already you can see the same problems that we were seeing with Frank. The system keeps changing. 3-4-3 one week, 4-4-2 the next week. Now I think it's like a deep 5-4-1 or something closer to that. None of it sticks. Nothing at all. And so more than just tactics is like, the tactics are bad, so we can see that. More than just that, there is a clear gap in motivation between Forest and especially West Ham and Tottenham here. These Spurs players just have no experience in relegation fights. They seem disinterested in getting out of this one. They just look paralyzed by the situation of the team. On paper, this roster obviously is still better than any team in Tottenham's part of the table. Leeds, Brighton, Forest, West Ham, Burnley, whatever. But relegation battles are not going to be decided by the roster and its on-paper quality. They're going to be decided by how those players can organize together and whether they actually believe in their ability to get out in the first place, which it seems like Tottenham's players don't, and also if they can find some good momentum. Tottenham are on the shittiest of momentum right now. And yeah, that's why the idea of Tottenham going down, something that felt unthinkable earlier in the season, suddenly feels very real. Like, I think that is going to be the thumbnail, by the way, of this video that I do. Once I finish editing this and put it out. I know literally 2 videos ago, we did a Tottenham thumbnail for the last match week reaction. But it's like, wow, this is just shocking from this group of players. And if they can't rediscover some confidence quickly, the combination of inexperience in a relegation race and the inability of any manager, even a seasoned relegation escapist like Igor Tudor, to turn things around, well, all that together could really leave Tottenham genuinely heading for the championship by May. But yeah, that is the match we covered. Please let us know in the comments what you guys think about these games, where you think certain teams are headed. Tottenham is a big one. Do you think they take the drop here, or will it be someone more expected, like a Forest or a West Ham? And what do you think goes on with that European race as well? And really, whatever team you're a fan of, tell us, what do you think the strengths are with your team right now, the weaknesses? Where do you think they might end up in the league by season's end? And yeah, with that said, we will see you soon for a Champions League video first, because we are on a Premier League break, followed by another set of predictions for the upcoming Premier League match week. So with that said, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.